If you really sit down and ask yourself whether Afghanistan can actually force its trade away from Pakistan, the first question that naturally comes up is, can you really beat geography? And the honest answer is, not easily. Afghanistan is landlocked, and its shortest, cheapest, and most familiar access to the sea has always been through Pakistan. The Karachi-Kandahar run is under 1,000 kilometers. Karachi to Kabul is about 1,400 kilometers. These are the routes Afghan traders know, with existing warehousing, trucking fleets, and border routines which are built over decades. When you start with that reality, any claim of "we won't use Pakistan anymore" becomes very hard to imagine in practice. Then you might ask, what about the alternatives everyone keeps bragging about? Chabahar, Bandar Abbas, the Central Asian rail links? Well, let's take Chabahar first. On paper, it's the poster child. But India has been trying to develop it for years, and despite all those announcements, the numbers stay modest. By 2024, India had moved roughly 90,000 20-feet containers and about 8 million tons total through the port. Respectable, yes, but tiny compared to what Karachi handles for Afghanistan. Meanwhile, distance alone can tell you the challenge. Chabahar to Zahedan is around 700 kilometers and then another 900 plus kilometers to Afghan border at Malak. After that, there is still Afghanistan's own overland haul. And just when things start to pick up, sanctions return. Like the US revoking the waiver in 2025, which throws everything back into uncertainty. How do you build a high-volume, low-cost trade corridor on top of an unpredictable sanction regime? Alright, then what about the northern corridors? The rail lines at Heraton, Akina, and Turgundi are useful, no doubt. Afghanistan reported roughly 4.6 million tons moving through these northern crossings in 2022 to 2023. That's a healthy number. But compare that to the scale of Pakistan's transit trade, where even in politically tense period as recent as 2018 to 2019, about 93,700 containers worth $5.7 billion moved through Pakistani ports and into Afghanistan. Central Asian routes are great for fuel and wheat imports and for exporting Afghan goods northwards, but should they be expected to replace Pakistan's deep sea gateway? That's where the argument weakens. You still have more borders, more paperwork, more changes, and more kilometers. Every extra hour on the road is extra cost. Every extra border is extra risk. You may then wonder, but if Pakistan keeps closing the border, doesn't that push Afghanistan to look elsewhere? It does, but temporarily. When Torkham or Chaman shut down, traders scramble to Iran. When it reopens and the dust settles, they rush back to Pakistan because again, it's cheaper, faster, and more predictable in pure logistical terms. Investors see this pattern clearly, and that leads to the real economic dilemma. Why would any serious investor pour millions into a new warehouse, rail spurs, trucking fleets, or cold chain facilities on alternative routes when there is high chance that in 2 years the political mood changes and Afghanistan trade drifts back to Karachi anyway? They won't. They'll stay cautious, invest lightly, or wait for stability that may never come. Then there's the political paradox inside Afghanistan. Shifting trade westward or northward would strengthen Herat, Nimroz, and the northern provinces, areas that were never Taliban's traditional economic heartland. Meanwhile, regions that have always dominated that movement, Kandahar, Helmand, Nangarhar, would see their trade-driven revenue shrink. Can the Taliban manage that internal rebalancing peacefully? That's an open question. And externally, pushing Afghanistan deeper into Iranian and Central Asian corridors simply swaps one dependency for another. It doesn't magically create autonomy. If the goal is to avoid pressure from Pakistan, how wise is it to rely more heavily on Iran at a time when sanctions and geopolitical tensions constantly disrupt trade flows? Finally, ask the biggest question of all. Is any of this sustainable at scale? Because developing an alternative to Pakistan isn't just about rerouting trucks. It's about billions in road repair, customs upgrade, border infrastructure, fuel stations, security, and stable financial channels, much of which Afghanistan cannot fund on its own. Iran struggles to maintain its own networks under sanctions. Central Asia is promising but nowhere near ready to absorb Pakistan-level freight volumes of Afghan imports. So yes, diversification is possible, but full replacement is not. And that's why the Commerce Minister's statement lands more as a political rhetoric than a viable policy. When you look at the distance, the tonnage, the capacity gaps, the sanctions issue, the maintenance costs, and the sheer scale of rerouting a country's entire trade architecture, it becomes obvious that Afghanistan cannot simply walk away from Pakistan's corridor. Not now, and not for the foreseeable future. The politics may shout one thing, but the economics speak far louder. And they say the trade will eventually follow the path that is shortest, cheapest, and the least complicated. In other words, it will follow the map.